Human orphan saves elderly alien after crash, not knowing he's a billionaire. The scent of scorched metal hung in the air, a familiar comfort to 5-year-old Elias as he trudged through the sprawling junkyard at the edge of Nexus City. His small frame, hidden beneath a tattered gray-brown sweater, moved with purpose among mountains of discarded alien technology. The megacity's towering spires loomed in the distance, their gleaming surfaces a stark contrast to the rust and decay surrounding him. Elias wiped his dirt-smudged face with the back of his hand, his bright blue eyes scanning the landscape for anything valuable. Those eyes, too old, too knowing for a child so young, narrowed as he spotted a promising pile of scrap metal. His thin fingers, calloused beyond their years, deftly sorted through the debris. 3 more power cells, he muttered to himself, tucking the small cylinders into his makeshift satchel. Maybe enough for dinner tonight. The fog rolled in thick that afternoon, unusual even for the perpetually gray outskirts. And Elias pulled his sweater tighter around his shoulders as the temperature dropped. Most scavengers had already retreated to whatever shelter they called home, but Elias couldn't afford to stop. No parents meant no safety net, just himself and the junk that kept him alive. He was about to head back when he heard it, a faint groan carried on the wind. Elias froze, his survival instincts kicking in. The outskirts weren't safe, especially for a human child. The various alien species that populated Nexus City mostly tolerated humans, but tolerance didn't equal kindness. The sound came again, weaker this time. Against his better judgment, Elias followed it to a fresh impact site. Something had crashed recently. The metal was still warm, steam rising as the fog condensed on its surface. And there, half buried in debris, lay a humanoid figure. Deep blue skin, elongated facial features, and torn golden robes with intricate patterns. Clearly someone of importance. The alien was elderly, his breathing shallow and labored. "Hey," Elias whispered, approaching cautiously. "You alive?" No response, just the shallow rise and fall of the alien's chest. Elias glanced around nervously. If this guy was important, people would be looking for him. People with money. People who might reward a helpful human boy or punish him for interfering. "Damn it," he muttered, a curse he'd picked up from the older scavengers. Decision made, he began clearing debris from around the alien's body. It took nearly an hour to free the unconscious figure and drag him onto Elias's cart, a contraption of welded scrap metal with mismatched wheels that squeaked in protest under the new weight. The alien was tall, at least 7 feet, making Elias's job that much harder. "You better be worth this," Elias grunted as he began the arduous journey back to his shelter, a repurposed shipping container reinforced with whatever materials he could scavenge. The fog thickened as night fell, the temperature plummeting further. Elias's breath came out in visible puffs as he strained against the cart's handle. His muscles burned, but he pressed on, 1 foot in front of the other. Inside his container, Elias had created a semblance of home. Scraps of fabric served as bedding, carefully collected rainwater filled several containers, and a small illegal power converter provided minimal heat and light. With tremendous effort, he managed to get the alien onto his makeshift bed. Up close, Elias could see the fine quality of the torn robes. Real gold thread interwoven with some material he didn't recognize. The patterns weren't just decorative, they were symbols of status and lineage. "Who are you?" Elias murmured, studying the alien's face. Despite the blue skin and elongated features, there was something dignified about him, even unconscious. Elias checked for obvious injuries, finding several cuts and what appeared to be a head wound. He cleaned them as best he could with his limited supplies, then covered the alien with his only blanket. "Don't die," he said firmly. "I didn't drag you all this way for nothing." As if in response, the alien's breathing deepened slightly. Elias settled himself in the corner of the container, wrapping his arms around his knees for warmth. He'd given up his bed and blanket, but something told him this was important. Maybe it was just the prospect of reward, or maybe it was something his parents had instilled in him before they disappeared. Help those in need, even if they're different from you. His stomach growled, reminding him he hadn't eaten since morning. The power cells in his satchel would fetch enough for food, but he couldn't leave his guest alone. "Tomorrow," he promised himself, eyes growing heavy despite the cold and hunger. "We'll figure this out tomorrow. As he drifted off to sleep, Elias didn't know that this simple act of kindness would alter the course of his life forever. He couldn't have known that the elderly alien lying on his bed was Thorin Vorks, one of the wealthiest businessmen in 3-star systems and a key diplomat in interstellar relations. He couldn't have known that Vorks' ship had been sabotaged or that powerful people were searching for him. All Elias knew was that someone needed help, and he had given it without question. Elias woke with a start, his small body stiff from sleeping propped against the cold metal wall. Dawn's faint light filtered through the cracks in his container home, it illuminating dust particles dancing in the air. For a moment, he'd forgotten about his guest, until a deep, resonant voice broke the silence. "Where am I? Who are you?" The alien was awake, sitting upright on the makeshift bed, his posture rigid despite obvious pain. His eyes, a startling amber with vertical pupils, fixed on Elias with intensity that made the boy shrink back. "I'm Elias," he answered, voice small but steady. "Found you in the junkyard. You crashed." The alien's hand moved to a concealed pocket in his robe, then his eyes widened in alarm. "My communicator. If you had anything valuable, it's probably gone," Elias said matter-of-factly. "Scavengers strip crash sites fast. I only found you because of the fog." The alien's face contorted in what might have been frustration or pain. "Do you have any idea who I am, child?" Elias shrugged, rising to his feet. "Someone important, judging by your clothes." "But out here, that doesn't matter much." He approached a small container of water. "Thirsty?" The alien seemed taken aback by the boy's directness. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. "Yes, thank you." Elias handed him a dented metal cup. "It's clean. I filter it myself." The alien examined the cup suspiciously before taking a cautious sip. His expression softened slightly. "You have technology to purify water?" "Not technology, charcoal and sand." Elias pointed to his crude filtration system in the corner. "Learned it from my dad before he disappeared." Something in the alien's demeanor changed. A subtle shift from wariness to curiosity. "You live here alone? A human child among aliens?" "Yep." Elias busied himself checking the alien's wounds. "Most aliens ignore me. Some try to help, some don't." His small fingers worked with surprising gentleness. "Your head looks better. The cut's already closing." "My species heals quickly," the alien replied, watching the boy with growing interest. "I am Thorin Vorks." Elias nodded, unimpressed by the name. "Can you eat human food?" "I've got some protein bars." "I should be able to digest it, yes?" Thorin seemed increasingly perplexed by the child's practical approach. "You're not afraid of me?" Elias paused, considering the question. "Should I be?" "Most humans are cautious around my kind. Most humans haven't lived their whole lives in an alien junkyard," Elias countered, retrieving a protein bar from his stash. He broke it in half, offering the larger portion to Thorin. "Besides, you're hurt. Not much of a threat right now." Thorin accepted the food with a surprised chuckle that turned into a wince. "Your assessment is accurate." He studied the protein bar before taking a bite. It's surprisingly palatable." "It's the best I could trade for yesterday." Elias sat cross-legged on the floor, devouring his portion in 3 quick bites. "So, what happened to you?" "Your ship looked pretty messed up." Thorin's expression darkened. "I believe I was targeted." "Enemies?" "In my position, it's inevitable." Elias nodded sagely, as if he completely understood the complexities of interstellar politics and business rivalries. "That's why I keep to myself." "No position, no enemies." This time Thorin's laugh was genuine despite his pain. An admirably simple philosophy. He attempted to stand but swayed dangerously. Elias was at his side in an instant, his small frame somehow providing enough support to steady the much larger alien. "Easy. You hit your head pretty hard. Your concern is unexpected." Thorin lowered himself back to the bed. "Why help me? What do you hope to gain?" The question wasn't accusatory, merely curious, but Elias stiffened nonetheless. "Maybe I wanted your fancy robe," he said defensively. "Or maybe I just didn't want you to die." Thorin studied the human child with newfound respect. Remarkable. Your species continues to confound me. How's that? Humans are considered primitive by many standards. Your technology lags centuries behind most spacefaring races. Your planet is divided by meaningless borders. Yet, he gestured to Elias and their surroundings. A child with nothing offers shelter and shares his meager food with a stranger of another species. Elias shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. Anyone would have done it. No, Thorin said firmly. They would not. I have visited 17 systems and encountered 34 sentient species. Few demonstrate such compassion without calculation. The boy fidgeted with a loose thread on his sweater. Well, I did kind of hope you might have credits or something to spare, he admitted. Thorin's expression softened into something like fondness. Honesty as well, truly remarkable. A comfortable silence fell between them. The elderly alien diplomat and the human child scavenger, an unlikely pair united by circumstance. I need to contact my people, Thorin finally said. There are matters of great importance that require my attention. The communication hub is in the city center, Elias replied, but they don't let kids like me in, especially not human kids. Thorin's amber eyes gleamed with determination. Then we shall have to find another way. Tell me, Elias, do you know this junkyard well? A slow smile spread across the boy's dirt-smudged face. Better than anyone alive. Then perhaps you might help me once more, Thorin said, and I promise, your kindness will not go unrewarded. Stay low, Elias whispered, leading Thorin through a labyrinth of discarded machinery. The alien diplomat moved with surprising agility despite his injuries, following the boy's nimble path through the junkyard. The morning fog had lifted, replaced by a hazy midday heat that shimmered above the metal landscape. Elias navigated confidently, occasionally stopping to ensure Thorin could manage the terrain. Not much farther, the boy promised, pointing toward a distant structure half buried beneath scrap. The old relay station's there. The city abandoned it when they built the new communication hub. Thorin nodded, conserving his breath. His formal robes, though torn, were hardly suited for this journey. Sweat beaded on his blue skin. Most people don't know it exists, Elias continued, pride evident in his voice. I found it last year. Sometimes it still works if you know how to kick it right. Your knowledge is impressive, Thorin managed between breaths. Elias grinned. Survival, that's all. Know your territory better than anyone else. They reached a small clearing where the junkyard's chaotic piles gave way to a more organized space. At its center stood a dilapidated dome structure, its once white surface now stained with rust and grime. A faded insignia, the emblem of Nexus City's communication authority, was barely visible above the entrance. Wait, Elias held up his hand, head tilted. Something's not right. Thorin froze, his amber eyes scanning their surroundings. What do you sense? It's too quiet. The boy pointed to a nearby pile of scrap. The junk rats always nest there. They're gone. No sooner had he spoken than a low hum filled the air, the distinctive sound of anti-gravity engines. Down! Thorin grabbed Elias, pulling him behind a large piece of machinery just as a sleek, black vessel descended into the clearing. Who are they? Elias whispered, peering around their cover. Trouble, Thorin replied grimly. Mercenaries. Likely Saurian. The ship's hatch opened and 4 figures emerged, tall, reptilian aliens with scaled skin and elongated snouts. They wore matching black armor adorned with red insignias and carried energy weapons that pulsed with an ominous blue light. Spread out, ordered the largest of the group, his voice a guttural rasp. The tracker shows Vorx's biosignature nearby. Elias shot Thorin a questioning look. Tracker? My blood contains trace nanites, Thorin explained quietly. A security measure, normally beneficial. Now problematic. Can they find us here? The signal is imprecise, but given enough time. Thorin's expression darkened. We need a diversion. Elias studied their surroundings, his young mind racing through possibilities. I have an idea, he whispered, but you need to stay here. Absolutely not, Thorin hissed. These are dangerous individuals. "And this is my junkyard," Elias countered with stubborn confidence. "Trust me." Before Thorn could protest further, the boy slipped away, moving with practiced stealth through the debris. The diplomat watched in helpless frustration as Elias circled behind the mercenaries, keeping to the shadows. The boy reached a towering pile of scrap metal precariously balanced against an old storage container. With calculated precision, he began removing key pieces from the bottom of the pile, creating instability in the structure. One of the mercenaries turned, sensing movement. "Over there!" Elias froze, heart pounding. The mercenary approached, weapon raised. Just 3 more steps and he'd be spotted. The boy yanked one final support piece free and darted away as the massive pile began to shift. Metal groaned and screeched as gravity took hold, sending an avalanche of debris cascading toward the mercenaries. "Ambush!" shouted their leader as the group scattered to avoid being crushed. In the ensuing chaos, Elias sprinted back to Thorin. "Now, while they're distracted." They dashed toward the relay station, Thorin wincing with each step. Elias reached the door first, fingers working quickly to bypass the simple lock mechanism. "Hurry!" Thorin urged, glancing back at the mercenaries who were regrouping, scanning the area with increasing anger. The door slid open with a reluctant groan, and they slipped inside. Elias immediately secured it behind them, engaging manual locks that hadn't been used in years. Inside the station was a single room filled with outdated communication equipment. Dust covered every surface, and the air smelled of disuse and electrical decay. "Will it work?" Thorin asked, examining the ancient console. "Sometimes." Elias moved to the main terminal, his small fingers dancing across the controls with surprising expertise. Power's still connected to the city grid. They forgot to cut it when they decommissioned this place. The console flickered to life, bathing them in a soft blue glow. Outside, they could hear the mercenaries approaching the station. "They're coming," Thorin said unnecessarily. Elias nodded, focused on his task. "Who are we calling?" "My security chief, Callan Dreyev. Frequency code 7-9-3-Alpha-Vorks. The boy input the sequence, and the console hummed as it attempted to establish a connection. A progress bar crawled across the screen with agonizing slowness. "Weak signal," Elias muttered. "Needs a boost." He ducked beneath the console, pulling open a panel to reveal a tangle of wires and circuitry. With confident movements, he rerouted several connections. A heavy thud against the door made them both jump. "Vorks, we know you're in there," called a harsh voice. "Come out now, and we'll make it quick." "Charming offer," Thorin remarked dryly. "I take it these are the enemies you mentioned?" "Not directly," Thorin's eyes narrowed. "Hired muscle. The question is, who's paying them?" The console suddenly crackled to life, and a distorted voice came through. "Identify. Requesting. Callan. This is Thorin Vorks. Authorization code Indigo *7. I need immediate extraction from a Sector 9 of the Nexus outskirts. Relay Station 12B. Hostiles present." The response was broken but clear enough. "Confirmed. 20 minutes. Hold position." 20 minutes, Elias repeated, glancing nervously at the door as another impact shook it. "That door won't last 5. Thorin surveyed the room with calculating eyes. "Then we need another plan." Outside, the mercenaries began cutting through the door with energy torches, the metal glowing red-hot around the edges. Elias looked up at Thorin, and for the first time, fear showed plainly on his young face. "Why are they after you? What did you do?" Thorin placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Nothing that would justify this, but in my position, one makes powerful enemies." He paused, studying Elias with newfound gravity. "I'm sorry I've brought this danger to you." The boy straightened, his fear giving way to determination. "Well, you're stuck with me now, and I know this place better than they do." As the door began to give way, Elias pointed to a maintenance hatch in the floor. "Service tunnels. They run all through this sector." Thorin nodded, a smile of admiration crossing his face. "Lead the way, young human. It seems I'm in your debt once again." The maintenance tunnels were a claustrophobic maze of corroded pipes and forgotten infrastructure. Water dripped from overhead conduits, forming murky puddles on the grated metal floor. The only light came from emergency strips that flickered intermittently, casting eerie blue shadows across their faces. "Watch your head," Elias warned, ducking beneath a low-hanging pipe. "These tunnels were built for maintenance droids, not tall aliens." Thorin stooped uncomfortably, his elegant posture at odds with their surroundings. "You navigate this labyrinth with remarkable confidence." "Had to learn," Elias replied, leading them deeper into the network. "When you're small and human in a city that doesn't want you, knowing where to hide keeps you alive." The distant sounds of pursuit echoed behind them, metallic bangs and guttural shouts as the mercenaries discovered their escape route. "They're following," Thorin observed grimly. Elias nodded, increasing his pace. "There's a junction ahead. We can lose them there." As they moved, the boy's expression grew contemplative. "You never said how you ended up in the junkyard. Important people like you don't usually crash in places like this." "A valid observation." Thorin winced as his injured leg caught on a protruding piece of metal. "My ship was sabotaged during a diplomatic mission. I was meant to negotiate a peace treaty between the Saurian Collective and the Terran colonies in the Proxima system." "Humans have colonies?" Elias asked, surprise evident in his voice. "3 small outposts, yes. Your species is remarkably persistent despite technological disadvantages." Thorin's tone held genuine admiration. "The Saurians view human expansion as a threat, despite evidence to the contrary. Is that why those lizard guys are after you? Because you're helping humans?" "Partially. Though I suspect the true motivation is more personal." Thorin paused, studying the boy. "What about you, Elias? How did a human child come to live alone in an alien junkyard?" Elias's pace slowed slightly. "My parents were researchers. They came to study Nexus City's technology, hoping to bring advancements back to Earth." His voice grew quieter. "There was an incident at the research facility, an explosion. Officials said it was human error, that my parents didn't understand the equipment they were handling." "You don't believe that? My dad was careful." "Methodical. Mom too." Elias's jaw tightened. "After they died, no one knew what to do with me. Humans don't have rights here, and Earth is too far away. So I ran before they could put me somewhere worse." Thorin's amber eyes softened with understanding. "You've survived admirably under impossible circumstances." "Just did what I had to." Elias shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. They reached the junction, a circular chamber where 6 different tunnels converged. Pipes and conduits snaked across the ceiling and walls, forming a complex web of infrastructure. "This way," Elias pointed to the second tunnel from the right. "It leads to..." A blinding flash of blue energy struck the wall beside them, sending sparks cascading over their heads. At the mouth of the tunnel they just exited stood 2 Saurian mercenaries, weapons raised. "Down!" Thorin shoved Elias behind a large pipe junction as more energy bolts sizzled past. "Surrender, Vorks," called the lead mercenary. "Our employer wants you alive, but he didn't specify condition." To Elias's astonishment, Thorin's demeanor transformed. Gone was the dignified diplomat. In his place stood a warrior. With fluid grace that belied his age and injuries, Thorin reached into his tattered robe and withdrew a slim metallic cylinder. "Stay behind me," he instructed Elias calmly. With a flick of his wrist, the cylinder extended into a staff that hummed with energy. Thorin stepped into the open, deflecting an energy bolt with a precise swing of his weapon. "A diplomat who knows how to fight?" Elias whispered in awe. "I wasn't always a diplomat," Thorin replied, advancing toward the mercenaries with measured steps. His movements were economical yet deadly, each stance calculated for maximum efficiency. The mercenaries fired rapidly, but Thorin's staff whirled in a blur of motion, intercepting each shot. He closed the distance with surprising speed, striking the first mercenary with a precise blow to the chest that sent him crashing against the wall. The second attacker abandoned his ranged weapon, drawing a vibroblade that hummed menacingly. He lunged at Thorin with practiced skill, but the blue-skinned diplomat parried effortlessly, countering with a sweep that took the Saurian's legs from under him. Elias watched in stunned silence as Thorin dispatched both attackers without killing them, a display of martial prowess tempered by restraint. "We need to move," Thorin said, collapsing his staff back into the cylinder. "There will be more." As if summoned by his words, shouts echoed from another tunnel, accompanied by the heavy thud of approaching footsteps. "This way!" Elias grabbed Thorin's hand, pulling him toward a narrow maintenance shaft, barely visible behind a cluster of pipes. It's tight, but it leads to the surface. They squeezed through the opening just as more mercenaries flooded the junction chamber. Elias led the way up a series of ladder rungs, his small frame navigating the confined space with ease. Thorin followed with more difficulty, his breathing labored. "Almost there," Elias encouraged, pushing against a heavy metal cover above them. Sunlight suddenly flooded the shaft as the cover gave way. They emerged into the harsh daylight of the junkyard, but in a section Elias didn't immediately recognize. Closer to the city proper, where the mountains of scrap gave way to more organized industrial zones, and directly into the path of an approaching patrol of Nexus City security forces. "Halt," commanded the lead officer, a tall insectoid alien with compound eyes and mandibles that clicked nervously. "Identify yourselves immediately." Thorin straightened to his full height, somehow managing to look dignified despite his disheveled appearance. "I am Thorin Vorks, Chief Diplomatic Envoy to the Galactic Concord. This child is under my protection." The security officers exchanged glances, clearly recognizing the name. "Sir," the lead officer began, "we've received reports of armed mercenaries operating in this sector. Are you involved?" "They're hunting him," Elias interjected, pointing back toward the tunnel entrance. "They tried to kill us." The officer's compound eyes swiveled toward the maintenance shaft just as armored figures began to emerge. "Weapons down. Nexus security." The confrontation that followed was brief but intense. The mercenaries, realizing they were outmatched by official forces, attempted to retreat but were quickly surrounded. Within moments, the Saurians were disarmed and restrained. As the security forces secured the area, Thorin placed a protective hand on Elias's shoulder. "You've shown extraordinary courage today," he said quietly, "and shared your story with me. I won't forget either." Elias looked up at the alien diplomat, a tentative smile forming on his dirt-smudged face. "So what happens now?" "Now," Thorin replied, "we ensure your safety and perhaps discuss your future." 10 years later, Elias adjusted the stiff collar of his formal attire, scowling at his reflection in the polished surface of his quarters wall. At 15, he had grown tall for a human, though still shorter than most of his alien classmates at the Galactic Concord Academy. His once tangled light hair was now neatly trimmed, and his bright blue eyes had lost none of their intensity, though they now held knowledge instead of just survival instinct. "You look like you're preparing for execution rather than a celebration," came an amused voice from the doorway. Elias turned to see Thorin Vorks standing there, his blue skin now marked with additional age lines, but his posture still regal and his amber eyes sharp as ever. "These formal clothes feel like a straitjacket," Elias complained, tugging at the high collar again. "I don't see why I have to attend this diplomatic reception anyway." "It's not like anyone wants a human there." Thorin entered the room, adjusting Elias's collar with practiced onens. "On the contrary, as my ward and the youngest recipient of the Academy's Innovation Award, your presence is specifically requested." "By whom? The Saurian ambassador who accidentally spilled his drink on me last month? Or maybe Prefect Dorn's daughter, who keeps asking if humans have evolved beyond primitive mating rituals?" Thorin's lips twitched with suppressed amusement. "The curiosity of your peers, however awkwardly expressed, indicates progress. 10 years ago, no human would have been admitted to the Academy, let alone celebrated for their achievements." Elias sighed, knowing Thorin was right. The decades since their fateful meeting had transformed his life beyond recognition. From a scavenger surviving day-to-day in a junkyard to the ward of one of the galaxy's most influential diplomats and businessmen, the transition had been neither smooth nor simple. "I know," he conceded, "and I'm grateful. It's just different," Thorin finished for him. "Neither fully of your old world nor entirely comfortable in the new one." Elias nodded, once again struck by how well his guardian understood him, despite their different species and backgrounds. "Your discomfort serves a purpose," Thorin continued, his tone gentler. "You bring a perspective no one else at the Academy possesses. Your solution for the Proxima Colony's atmospheric processors demonstrated that brilliantly. I just adapted techniques we used in the junkyard to filter toxins. Elias shrugged, though pride colored his voice. It wasn't revolutionary. To you, perhaps. To the Proxima colonists who can now breathe without respiratory assistance, it was quite revolutionary indeed. A chime sounded, indicating their transport was waiting. Ready? Thorin asked. Elias squared his shoulders. As I'll ever be. The journey to the diplomatic spire was brief, but offered a spectacular view of Nexus City, a metropolis that Elias now understood was among the most advanced in the sector. The gleaming towers and flowing traffic lanes were a far cry from the junkyard where he'd spent his early years. Occasionally, Thorin would bring him back to those outskirts, not to reminisce, but to help identify promising human scavengers who might benefit from the Vorks Foundation's educational programs. Elias had insisted on that condition when Thorin established the Foundation 3 years ago, that it would specifically seek out humans who, like himself, existed on the margins of alien society. The reception was already in full swing when they arrived, a gathering of diplomats, business leaders, and academic elites from across the galactic Concord. The vast hall sparkled with bioluminescent decorations that shifted colors in harmony with the ambient music. Remember, Thorin said quietly as they entered, you have earned your place here. Elias nodded, straightening his posture and adopting the confident expression he'd practiced countless times. It was a mask, but a necessary one. Almost immediately, they were approached by a group of Academy officials, their varied anatomies all adorned with the same formal insignia. Envoy Vorks greeted the lead official, a willowy being with translucent skin through which complex circulatory systems were visible. And young Elias, your atmospheric filtration design continues to impress. The Proxima governor sends his personal thanks. I'm glad it's helping, Elias replied, falling into the diplomatic cadence Thorin had taught him. The colonists' resilience deserved technological support to match. The official's skin flushed with a pleased purple hue. Indeed, human determination is noteworthy. As the conversation continued, Elias noticed a group of Academy students watching him from across the hall. Among them was Talia Noor, the daughter of a prominent Signon diplomat. Unlike most of his peers, she had always treated Elias with genuine interest, rather than condescension or exotic curiosity. Catching his eye, she smiled and inclined her head slightly in greeting. Elias returned the gesture, feeling a familiar warmth rise in his chest. Perhaps you should socialize with your contemporaries, Thorin suggested, noticing the exchange. I can manage the academic dignitaries alone. Elias hesitated. Are you sure? Quite. Besides, I believe Miss Noor would appreciate your company more than these administrators would. With a grateful nod, Elias made his way through the crowd toward Talia and her group. He was halfway there when a hand clamped firmly on his shoulder. The human prodigy, came a voice that immediately set Elias's nerves on edge. How fortunate we are to witness your integration. Elias turned to face Morden Krell, the son of a Saurian trade minister and the most vocal opponent of human inclusion at the Academy. Tall and imposing with scaled skin and predatory eyes, Krell had made it his mission to remind Elias of his proper place at every opportunity. Krell, Elias acknowledged neutrally. Enjoying the reception? I was, until the air quality diminished. Krell's companion snickered at the thinly veiled insult. One wonders why Envoy Vorks continues his charitable project. Perhaps he keeps you as humans. Keep primitive animals. What do you call them? Pets. Elias felt heat rise to his face but maintained his composure. Years in the diplomatic corps had taught him that showing anger only gave opponents like Krell satisfaction. Perhaps you should ask him yourself, Elias suggested calmly, though I suspect you already know the answer. The Vorks Foundation's Human Education Initiative has produced 3 patents this year alone, all currently being implemented in Saurian territories, if I'm not mistaken. Krell's scales darkened with anger, but before he could respond, Talia appeared at Elias's side. There you are, she said smoothly. Father was just asking about your atmospheric processor design. He's considering something similar for our lunar colonies. She turned to Krell with practiced diplomatic coolness. Minister Krell's son, yes? I believe your father is waiting for you near the eastern balcony. Something about an urgent communication from home. Krell hesitated, then withdrew with a final glare at Elias. "Thanks for the rescue," Elias murmured as they moved away. Talia's four-fingered hand brushed against his briefly. "No rescue necessary. You were handling him quite effectively. I simply grew tired of watching his scales change colors with impotent rage." Elias laughed, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "Is your father really interested in the processor design?" "Absolutely," she confirmed. "Though he didn't send me to fetch you. That was my own initiative." Her large, iridescent eyes met his with unmistakable warmth, and Elias felt that familiar flutter in his chest again. A reminder that navigating alien social hierarchies wasn't the only complex challenge he faced at the academy. 5 years later, the Proxima colony shimmered under the red dwarf's light, its protective dome refracting the stellar radiation into a perpetual sunset. Elias stood at the viewport of the orbital station, hands clasped behind his back, studying the atmospheric processors he designed 5 years earlier. Even from this distance, he could see they weren't functioning properly. Their emission patterns irregular, their output diminished. At 20, Elias had grown into his potential. No longer the awkward academy student, he stood tall and confident, his body hardened by the specialized training Thorin had insisted upon. His light hair was swept back from a face that had lost its boyish softness, replaced by defined features in a determined set to his jaw. The formal attire of the diplomatic corps suited him now, though he still preferred the practical utility wear of an engineer when working. "The atmospheric readings are worse than we thought," came a melodic voice behind him. Elias turned to find Talia entering the observation deck, a data tablet in hand. The years had only enhanced her natural grace. Her blue skin had deepened to a rich azure that seemed to glow from within, and her snow-white hair now fell in an intricate braid over one shoulder. The form-fitting environmental suit she wore for the mission highlighted her elegant figure in ways that made it difficult for Elias to maintain his professional focus. Their relationship had evolved from academy acquaintances to professional colleagues, and finally to something more complex. A connection neither had fully defined, but both increasingly relied upon. "Oxygen levels have dropped 12% in the eastern quadrant," she continued, joining him at the viewport. "And there are trace elements in the filtration system that shouldn't be there." "Sabotage," Elias confirmed grimly, just as Thorin suspected. "The question is who and why." Talia's large aquamarine eyes met his. "The colony represents no threat to anyone. It's barely self-sufficient." "It's not about the colony." Elias took the tablet, studying the data. "It's about what the colony represents. Human expansion, however modest, threatens certain interests." "The Saurian Collective," Talia surmised. "Possibly, though they'd be the obvious suspects." Elias frowned, zooming in on a molecular analysis. "This compound, it's familiar." "How so?" "I've seen it before. In the Academy archives. It's a degradation agent specifically designed to target filtration systems." His eyes narrowed. "Developed by Krell Industries." Talia's expression darkened. "Morden's father's company." "Too obvious," Elias muttered. "Morden's a bully, but he's not stupid. He wouldn't leave such an easily traceable signature. Unless that's exactly what he wants us to think." Talia's fingers brushed against his as she took back the tablet. The brief contact sent a familiar warmth through Elias's body. "A double bluff. Or someone wants to frame the Saurians." Elias turned back to the viewport. "Either way, we need to get down there and examine the processors directly." "The shuttle's prepped for departure." Talia hesitated, then added, "I've arranged private quarters for us in the colony. Adjacent, but with connecting doors." Elias looked at her, catching the subtle shift in her tone. "Practical arrangement for a working mission?" "Very practical," she agreed, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Though the colony administrator seemed to make certain assumptions about our professional relationship." "Did you correct him?" "I saw no diplomatic reason to do so." Her eyes held his, unabashed. "Did I or—" Elias felt his pulse quicken. "Not at all. Diplomatic relations are complex." "Increasingly so," she murmured. The shuttle journey to the surface was brief but tense, and filled with unspoken anticipation that had nothing to do with their mission. They were met at the landing pad by the colony administrator, a gruff human named Garrett, who had the weathered look of someone who'd spent too many years under artificial atmosphere. "About time someone from the Concord showed up," he grumbled after introductions. "We've lost 2 agricultural sectors already. Another week of this, and we'll have to start evacuation procedures." "That won't be necessary," Elias assured him. "We'll resolve this." "You sound mighty confident for someone who just arrived." "I designed these systems," Elias replied without arrogance. "If someone's tampered with them, I'll find out how and fix it." Garrett's expression shifted from skepticism to cautious hope. "You're that Vork's kid? The one from the junkyard?" Elias blinked, surprised at being recognized. "I am." "Well, I'll be damned." Garrett's weathered face broke into a smile. "Your filtration design saved my daughter's life. She was born with weak lungs. Wouldn't have survived a day in the old atmosphere." The administrator's demeanor transformed entirely. He led them through the colony with renewed energy, pointing out modifications they'd made to Elias's original designs and introducing them to colonists along the way. Everywhere they went, Elias was met with gratitude that clearly made him uncomfortable, but touched him deeply. "You're quite the hero here," Talia observed quietly as they were shown to their quarters, "though you never mentioned this impact in your reports." "I just solved an engineering problem," Elias shrugged. "They did the hard part, building lives on an inhospitable world." "Your modesty is uniquely human," she noted with a fond smile. "My people would have commissioned statues by now." Their quarters were simple but comfortable. 2 adjacent rooms in the administrative complex with the promised connecting door between them. After settling in, they spent the remainder of the day examining the atmospheric processors, collecting samples and interviewing maintenance personnel. By evening, Elias had confirmed his suspicions. "It's definitely sabotage," he told Talia as they reviewed their findings in his quarters. "Someone introduced a compound that's slowly corroding the filtration membranes from within. Can it be reversed?" "Yes, but I'll need to synthesize a neutralizing agent." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration he'd never outgrown. "The colony has the basic components, but it'll take time." "Time the colonists may not have," Talia finished his thought. Elias nodded grimly. "And whoever did this might still be here, watching. They could try again or worse." A comfortable silence fell between them as they considered their next steps. Talia moved to the viewport, gazing out at the colony's nighttime illumination. The artificial lights cast a soft glow across her features, highlighting the delicate contours of her face. "We should inform Thorin," she finally said. "Already done." "He's sending additional security." Elias joined her at the viewport, standing close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. "They'll arrive tomorrow." Talia turned to face him, her expression suddenly vulnerable in a way he rarely saw. "Elias, there's something I've been meaning to discuss about us." His heart rate accelerated. "I'm listening." "Our species have different approaches to relationships." Her eyes searched his. "I've studied human customs, but I'm aware that cross-species attachments are uncommon, especially for your kind." "Not uncommon," Elias corrected gently, "just new. Humans haven't been part of the galactic community long enough for many precedents." "Then we would be setting precedent," she said, a question in her voice. Elias reached out, his fingers tracing the luminescent patterns on her arm, an intimate gesture among her people. "I've never been particularly concerned with following established paths." Her skin brightened at his touch, the bioluminescent properties of her species responding to emotional stimuli. "Nor have I." The connecting door between their rooms remained unused that night, but the boundary it represented had been crossed nonetheless. As artificial dawn broke over the colony, they lay entwined in Elias's bed, her luminescent skin casting a soft blue glow across the sheets, their differences forgotten in the universal language of intimacy. "The Signan Council would have opinions about this," Talia murmured against his chest. "As would the Human Colonial Authority, I imagine," Elias replied, tracing patterns along her spine. "Do you care?" He considered the question seriously. "I care about you. The rest is diplomatic noise." She laughed softly, the sound like chimes in the quiet room. A surprisingly undiplomatic answer from Thorin Vork's protege. Some things transcend diplomacy. His expression grew more serious. But we still have a colony to save. And a saboteur to catch, she agreed, reluctantly disentangling herself. Though I find I'm suddenly much more invested in the safety of human colonies. As they prepared to face the day and its challenges, Elias realized that in finding Talia, he discovered something he'd never fully had. Not in the junkyard, not at the academy, not even with Thorin's guardianship. A sense of belonging that was chosen rather than circumstantial. But first they had a mystery to solve and lives to save. Present day. And that, Elias concluded with a smile, is how a scrawny human orphan from a junkyard ended up saving an alien billionaire without knowing it. Talia laughed, her luminescent skin pulsing with amusement as she nestled closer to him on the observation deck of Thorin's private estate. At 30, Elias had grown into a formidable man, broad-shouldered and confident, with the subtle scars of his adventures visible on his exposed forearms. His once light hair now had strands of distinguished silver at the temples, and his blue eyes had lost none of their intensity. "You always downplay the most dramatic parts, Ina," she chided, tracing a finger along his jawline. Her touch still sent electricity through him, even after all these years. Like how we discovered Morden beaten half to death in the colony's maintenance tunnels. Or how the neutralizing compound I was synthesizing had the exact same molecular structure as the one in my parents' research files, Elias added, his expression growing more serious. The memories of that day on Proxima remained vivid. Finding Morden and Krell unconscious, his scales bruised and broken. Realizing the sabotage compound matched the signature of the explosion that had killed his parents. The frantic race to save both the colony and the truth that had been buried for 20 years. "I still can't believe Morden was investigating his own father," Talia said. "People can surprise you." Elias gazed out at the meticulously landscaped grounds of the estate, where the setting sun cast long shadows across alien flora, carefully selected from dozens of worlds. He may be a prejudiced ass, but even he couldn't stomach genocide. The conspiracy they'd uncovered had been breathtaking in its scope, a coalition of conservative interests from multiple species who feared human innovation potential. Trade Minister Krell had been merely one cog in a machine designed to suppress human advancement while making it appear natural. The explosion that killed Elias's parents wasn't an accident, but a calculated elimination of researchers whose work threatened the status quo. When Thorin arrived with the security team and those sealed records from the conquered archives, Talia shook her head in wonder. "He'd been investigating for years," Elias said softly, "ever since he took me in. He suspected the truth about my parents, but needed proof. And you provided it by recognizing that compound signature." Talia's aquamarine eyes shimmered with pride. "Your junkyard instincts saving the day again." Elias laughed. "Some things you never unlearn." The confrontation in the colony's central plaza had become legendary. Thorin Vorks, now elderly but still commanding, presenting evidence before representatives of 17 species, while Elias and Talia implemented their solution to save the failing atmosphere. The Coalition's exposure had sent shockwaves through the galactic concord, resulting in sweeping reforms and finally, full recognition of humanity's right to expand and innovate without interference. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't found Thorin that day in the junkyard?" Talia asked. "Sometimes." Elias took her hand, his thumb brushing over the intricate bonding bracelet she wore, a blend of wine and tradition and human craftsmanship that symbolized their union. "But I'm more grateful for what did happen." The sound of approaching footsteps interrupted their reflection. They turned to see Thorin entering the observation deck, his movements slower now, but his presence no less commanding. At his side walked a small, blue-skinned girl with striking blue eyes, a perfect blend of her parents' features. "Papa." "Mama," the child called, breaking free from Thorin's gentle grip to run toward them. "Grandfather Thorin showed me how to program the garden drones." Elias scooped up his daughter, marveling as always at the miracle of her existence. The medical innovations required for Signan human reproduction had been yet another breakthrough born of necessity and determination. "Did he now?" Elias raised an eyebrow at Thorin. "And did he also show you how to override their safety protocols like last time?" Thorin's amber eyes twinkled with mischief. A child should understand both rules and their creative applications. That's his diplomatic way of saying yes, Talia stage whispered to their daughter, who giggled in response. The Concord representatives have arrived, Thorin announced, his tone shifting to something more formal. They await us in the main hall. Elias nodded, setting his daughter down. Ready to make history again? With you? Always. Talia's skin brightened with anticipation. They made their way through the sprawling estate, a far cry from the shipping container where Elias had once sheltered a crashed diplomat. The main hall was filled with dignitaries from across the galaxy, gathered to witness the signing of the Proxima Accords, a new framework for interspecies cooperation that placed human innovation at its center, rather than treating it as a threat. As they entered, conversations hushed. Elias recognized faces from a dozen worlds, some friendly, some formerly hostile, all now united by a common purpose. At the center of the hall stood a display case containing a simple artifact, a small makeshift cart welded from scrap metal, preserved exactly as it had been when a 5-year-old boy had used it to transport an injured alien to safety. Thorin had commissioned it as the official symbol of the Vork's Foundation, a reminder that compassion could transcend species and change destinies. The elderly diplomat took his position at the podium, his voice still strong despite his advanced years. 25 years ago, he began, a human child with nothing offered shelter to a stranger. That act of kindness, performed without expectation of reward, exemplifies the spirit these accords seek to foster. His amber eyes found Elias in the crowd. Humanity's greatest strength is not their adaptability, though it is remarkable, nor is it their intelligence. Though they have proven themselves equal to any species, it is their capacity for compassion without calculation, their willingness to help even when there is no obvious benefit. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The Proxima incident revealed those who feared human potential. Today, we embrace it. The Vorksnor Initiative for Interspecies Innovation will ensure that no promising research is suppressed, no beneficial technology hidden away. Elias felt Talia's hand slip into his as Thorin continued. Their daughter stood before them, witnessing history being made. History that began with a simple act of kindness in a junkyard. Later, as celebrations continued around them, Elias and Talia slipped away to the privacy of the garden. Under the light of distant stars, they shared a moment of quiet reflection. From junkyard orphan to galactic diplomat, Talia mused, her fingers intertwined with his. Quite the journey. With quite the companion, Elias replied, drawing her close. The scent of her, like nothing on earth yet more familiar to him now than anything from his homeworld, filled his senses. Do you ever miss it? She asked. The simplicity of the junkyard? Elias considered the question seriously. Sometimes. But I wouldn't trade this life, our life, for anything. Not even for a shipping container full of power cells, she teased, referencing his childhood currency. Not even for that. He laughed, then grew more serious. Though I do sometimes wonder about that first night. What made me decide to help Thorin when every survival instinct said to leave him there? Perhaps it wasn't a decision at all, Talia suggested. Perhaps it was simply your nature, the essence of humanity that Thorin speaks of so eloquently. Or perhaps, Elias said with a smile, it was just a lonely boy who couldn't walk away from someone who needed help. Either way, Talia whispered, her luminescence brightening as she leaned in closer. I'm grateful for that human boy and his makeshift cart. As their lips met under the alien stars, Elias reflected that his greatest discovery hadn't been atmospheric processors, or neutralizing compounds, or even the truth about his parents. It had been the discovery that kindness, offered without expectation, could return 1,000-fold. That a simple act of compassion could ripple across decades and change not just one life, but countless others. From orphaned scavenger to the architect of a new era of human-alien relations. All because he hadn't walked past a crashed ship on a cold, foggy day. Some might call it destiny. Elias simply called it human.